Before you start this recording, please grab some tissues because you're going to need them. Our guest is so incredible in the way that she tells her story, and her story is so miraculous that you are not going to believe it, but you are definitely going to need your tissues. You are going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to have so many enormous feelings, but you're also going to learn about resilience and how a big heart and a strong mind can help you through anything. Welcome to Building Your Family. This is a podcast about fertility treatment, donor conception, surrogacy, and all the ways the modern family is built. I'm your host. My name is Lisa Schumann. I'm a licensed therapist, I'm an author, I'm a researcher, and I am so proud to be here to tell you today that I have somebody who is absolutely going to delight you. I am going to introduce you to Andrea León. She is at Hot Mess IVF Mom, both on Instagram and on TikTok. And she has done so much to help so many people, really from the goodness of her heart. She does not work in this industry. And yet I met her at our annual fertility conference a couple of years in a row now. And she is there giving her heart and soul to everyone around her to really help people understand what is involved in fertility treatment, how to understand grief, how to understand moving from one phase of treatment to another, and so many other things, which she will tell you today. So welcome, Andrea. So nice to have you here. I'm thrilled to see you, and I really appreciate you telling your story. I know you have thousands of followers, but you're always so heartfelt in your experience and sharing what you've been through. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners as well, I think you could really help them understand what you've been through, and maybe it'll help them feel less alone.
Absolutely. So I'm Andrea León, Hot Mess IVF Mom on Instagram and TikTok, and a little bit on Twitter, not so much.
Okay.
But my husband and I went through 8 recurrent pregnancy losses, all naturally conceived prior to doing IVF. We also had 2 failed IUIs that did not lead to pregnancy. So we did get a taste of fertility treatments prior to doing IVF, trying different things, all the snake oil treatments you can think of, praying. And, as Latinos, we really have a lot of faith. And we truly thought by praying harder and putting things in God's hands that it would work out. But then, our prayers really led us to seeking intervention. And I didn't want to do IVF at first. There's a lot of controversy with IVF, especially in the Hispanic world. We weren't truly sure what it was exactly, and I didn't understand completely how it would help recurrent pregnancy loss, because I could get pregnant, but I could not stay pregnant. So how would IVF help? And that's when my reproductive endocrinologist so patiently and lovingly explained to me, and really, I don't want to say dumb it down, but in a way a patient can truly understand why this may work. There is no promises. There is no, concrete evidence or research that this was going to work 100%. So we put our faith to work. We did IVF. And throughout all of that, my husband and I did have disagreements. I wish we did handle things perfectly and that, we were just positive the entire time, but we weren't. There was a lot of uncertainty. I guess the best way to say it is nothing prepared us for the conversations and decisions we were going to make in this marriage in order to grow our family. I took sex ed, just like everybody else in America, didn't learn about infertility or treatments or pregnancy loss. So we are both just very naive about what to do.
As we all are, right?
And as we all are. And I'm very grateful for social media for allowing, education to go viral and stories of hope to go viral. And that's really what inspired me. Back then, when I started my socials, it was YouTube, and I didn't really know how to YouTube back then, but I tried to blog a little bit, and it wasn't until TikTok, 2020 pandemic, I downloaded it, shared my story, and though it seems weird, like, why would I share my story? I was kind of like, I don't know, shouting at the sky. Like, this is my story. It sucks. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I want a baby and I can't have one. Or at least I don't know if I can have one.
Right.
I just want to say, I really hated it when people would tell me, it's going to happen. You're going to have a baby. Because the reality of infertility is you don't know that.
Yes.
Sometimes this ends with no baby.
Right.
Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
Of course.
And like, that is something I accepted in my heart. When we went that direction of IVF, I told God and my husband, if this doesn't work, that was my capacity. That was it for me. And I came to peace with that. I was okay having 100 dogs for the rest of my life, and it sucks that our brain goes there, and that's not thinking negatively either.
Right.
It's
exactly.
just the reality.
Yes.
Because I did end up having my miracle rainbow IVF baby after doing IVF. I thankfully did. And then after that, a year later, another pregnancy loss. And so I removed my tubes. I removed my tubes so that I can have peace and not live with this curse of getting pregnant and losing the pregnancy.
Wow.
But that means I only have the option of IVF.
Right.
And that was a very difficult decision. But I will say my mental health, my quality of life, all of it improved significantly because I no longer live in fear month to month. But for the rest of my life, I am infertile.
Oh my gosh.
So they say, and I will never have a baby the fun way. And I wish my problems were all cured once I had my daughter. But it wasn't until after I had my daughter, I was diagnosed with PCOS.
Wow.
It wasn't until I removed my tubes, I found out I had endometriosis. I didn't even know that. And that's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Like as a Latina, we don't talk about these things out loud so much. This is more like a very private thing you do not share out loud or with other people. And I have a big mouth. And if you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it. So my family didn't like it so much at first when I was sharing online, and neither did my husband at first. But then when I made it less weird, like, this is not a weird thing.
Yes.
Because now that I share my story, I'm hearing other people's stories and their problems with infertility. And look, this seems to be more common than we think. I'm not a freak of nature, with this very rare situation. There's other people like me and my husband. And, my husband also has male factor. And that was something that was very difficult for him and devastating to learn because we were young. I was 20 when I first got married and got pregnant for the first time. I was 20 years old. Wow. You would think, oh, she's young, she's healthy. And that is why I was dismissed a lot. I was really dismissed a lot by a lot of, providers because I am young, healthy. She's fine. It's one doctor even told me it's bad luck. I'm like, this doesn't feel like bad luck. No. This feels like something's wrong. Like, I need more treatment. And I pushed for a lot of testing. And because I have worked in healthcare hands-on, and on top of that, my spicy Latina attitude, I pushed hard. I pushed really hard and tried to Google the best doctors out there. It wasn't until the last maternal fetal doctor I consulted with prior to doing IVF, he saw that I had a binder this thick of all the tests I've ever done. He looked at it and he closed it and said, you have seen some of the most incredible doctors from what I see there. It's time for you to make a choice. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, that's the scary part because I don't know what to do. He said, well, whoever you choose as your team, because I created a team before I did IVF. I picked my maternal fetal doctor. I picked my reproductive endocrinologist, my OBGYN. I was very picky who I had because I needed someone that would listen to me.
Yes.
Because the amount of times I was pregnant and no one heard me. They dismissed the pain I was going through as cramps. They're like, oh, baby's heartbeat's fine. Everything's fine. It's just cramps. I'm like, I don't feel that. I feel my body pushing. Something is wrong. I can feel my body rejecting it. And I don't know why. till this day, I don't know why I
Wow.
went through so much pregnancy loss, but I am working with Stanford University and helping them with their pregnancy loss research.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and hopefully I can
Yeah.
get answers along with many other people like me. They're
Mm-hmm.
testing not just the women, they're also testing the men. They need to see what's going on both sides.
Yes. 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 So important.
Look how long it took to study women. And then male infertility.
Yes.
Like everyone thought it was us.
Yes.
And it's more than that.
Yes.
You know, it's really nobody's fault. I hate it when someone says like, oh, it's my fault or it's their fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just important to get both of you tested and figure out what is making this difficult or what may be causing your infertility or pregnancy loss struggles. And that pregnancy loss actually is kind of like a fertility issue.
Yes.
That's something I didn't understand for a very long time. When my doctor referred me to the fertility doctor, I was like, why are you sending me there?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, because they have like really cool technology and lots of different types of testing and they can really dig deeper into this. I was like, okay. There's a lot of things I learned and that I wanted to share out loud so that people were aware of it. And not just from, my Hispanic community, but
Yes.
for everybody.
Yes. So, Andrea, I just want to back up for a second because, there's so many things that I think are so important to talk about. But I guess just in the beginning, you had this situation where here you are, young and healthy, and apparently nothing wrong with you, and you're having trouble getting pregnant. Obviously, you didn't know that you had maybe some endometriosis or there was male factor or anything. You had no idea. And just like anybody else, you're trying to get pregnant at home. And you're probably thinking, like, forget infertility treatment. I'm never going to do that. Or forget IUIs or forget male infertility. Like, none of these things probably were on your radar at all. And they probably, as you said, seemed unappealing to you. So you had to go from this place where you just thought your life was going to be like your neighbors, just get pregnant at home and have your however many babies you want to have, and then leapfrog into this new world and say, all the stuff that I thought I would never do, now here I am doing it. So how did you get to that place?
To doing IVF?
Yes, to finally saying, okay, I know I'm pushing against my family. I know I'm pushing against my culture. I know I'm pushing against religion. I know I'm pushing against all those people who say, just keep trying, or God will give you the baby, or whatever. And you're like, I have to really push ahead, even though I don't want to. I've got to take this harder road.
So after my 8th pregnancy loss,
Oh my gosh.
it happened on Christmas Eve. So it was very sad. It was really awful. And I didn't consider IVF until a couple months after that. We were considering surrogacy or gestational carrier. We were really looking into that because I was very traumatized and scared to get pregnant again. And we had a friend that was willing to do that for us. Well, I didn't know with gestational carriers that, at least in my state, it was a state mandate that you can't use insurance to pay for IVF or help with IVF if it's for gestational carriers. I was like, okay, big cost, but we can figure it out. And then we found out that her insurance wouldn't cover the pregnancy visits or delivery.
Oh, wow.
Because it wasn't her baby. So I was like, okay, this is getting a little trickier, and that there's mandated therapy, which makes sense because this is an extensive process and affects all of us differently. My husband, myself, my carrier.
Yes.
It was a lot to take in. So at that point, I applied through the Cade Foundation for a grant. I didn't know about the Cade Foundation until my fertility doctor told me about it. I'm just grateful he did, and more doctors should share resources like that because I would not have been able to move forward had it not been for that grant. Because my husband and I we were like full-time healthcare workers, getting by school and just living paycheck to paycheck like a lot of people are in America.
Of course.
And that didn't make us any less deserving for having a baby.
No.
Sometimes I was like, oh, we can't even afford IVF. Why have kids? But that's not true.
That's
not true.
But it does add insult to injury. It does.
It does.
Terrible.
There's a lot of intrusive thoughts that go on in the fertility journey.
So you realize how expensive things were going to be. And so now you have to accept fertility treatment. You have to accept not thinking about your religious or cultural norms. You have to not think about what your family's going to say or even what your husband is thinking. You're thinking, I've got to pursue fertility treatment, which I don't want anyway. And then you're faced with all these costs. So then what?
We found out that we got the grant, and that was so exciting. At first, I was a little like, what? We got the grant? Because nothing ever good happens to us. That's what it felt like, at least. So we got the grant. We're like, okay, this is great. And then pandemic hit. The pandemic hit.
Gosh.
Because I didn't want to start IVF right away. I was like, okay, let me just wait. And then the pandemic hit. I was like, okay, what are we going to do? Because, oh, I forgot to mention, right before the pandemic hit, the world shut down. A month prior, I did start the IVF cycle for the birth control pills. Never taken birth control pills in my life. Had a horrible reaction.
Oh,
had to cancel that
wow.
cycle and start all over. And when it was time to start all over, that's when the world shut down. And
Oh, no.
we were left with more uncertainty. And we didn't do our egg retrieval till like the end of the year, because that was the beginning of the year we started. It wasn't until like the end of the year, because my fertility doctor reassured me that my anxiety was not like just my anxiety. He said it is fact that we never seen a pregnancy from start to finish in the pandemic. This is fact. We have not seen women with the vaccine from start to finish yet. And I was like, man, that's like scary. Like, what do I do? More decisions to make, like even more.
Yes.
And so finally did the egg retrieval at the end of the year, and I delayed again my transfer. We created our embryos, everything was set. I could have done the transfer right away, and I didn't for like, I don't even know, like 6 or 8 months, something like that.
Why is that?
Because I was scared. I was honestly scared. I did a lot of therapy before starting. I was like, okay, this is going to be my 9th pregnancy. And that was a lot to take in. And I didn't know if this was going to work. And I felt like I was putting all my eggs in one basket, because I was certain that I would not be okay if it didn't work out. And thankfully it did. The time for transfer came. I finally felt ready, did therapy. There's nothing wrong with therapy. We also did couples therapy, all of the things,
That's great.
support groups, whatever you got to do to, like
get through,
get it out and figure out how you feel before making such big decisions. This is really important. So it was a lengthy journey, and mental health struggles definitely were a big part of it.
Of course.
I'm like super hormonal right now. Like,
well, of course. And first of all,
I'm about to start my period. I know that's still TMI, but at this point, like, that's what I do on my platform. I'm a little TMI.
Fine. Listen,
So, like,
I mean, Andrea, you're talking about all of the stuff, which is tough enough. I mean, all of it is like more than most people can imagine, but that was even after all those miscarriages. So you had all these losses, all of this pain, all of this emotional scarring and trauma. And now you're going into more, and the pandemic and the fear and financial constraints and relationship issues, and you're still pursuing it. It's like unbelievable that you were even able to get up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor's office. I mean, it's remarkable.
Oh yeah. There was a lot of like tears driving to the doctor's office, anxiety, prayers. Like, it's hard. And, you put a lot into it when it comes to IVF, like so much, it's weeks and months of injections, pills, like, and you have to do this around your life schedule, whatever you're doing. I was working, had my coworkers help me with my progesterone and oil injections, because I hated doing that to myself.
Yeah.
It's really hard to like,
get
I don't
it
know how
in.
to do that. Yeah. I'll do, the Lovenox on my tummy, that's fine. But back there,
that is rough. Yes.
Yeah. It's difficult all around in all aspects, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it.
Every way. And then you had your daughter. So were you, during the pregnancy, feeling anxious? Because all of a sudden now it's like, most people say when they get pregnant easily, they think that's kind of the norm. Oh, we got pregnant, no problem. Our honeymoon, we got no problem. So they're shocked when they have a miscarriage or something goes wrong. You had the opposite. You were almost used to having things go wrong. And now all of a sudden something's going right. You must have felt like this is like an out of body experience. I'm pregnant and she's okay. And, were you nervous? How did you deal with that?
It was not an easy pregnancy journey. It was really rough. I
Yeah.
wish it was a smooth ride, but unfortunately that wasn't in my life cards. I had a vanishing twin the first trimester. First trimester. And so that was hard, because
Yes.
we saw 2 babies, 2 heartbeats, and then only 1 heartbeat, 1 baby. So that was difficult. We went to maternal fetal routine for IVF, just to check everything's okay. And on top of that, had the vanishing twin. That's when we found out my cervix wasn't looking so great. My maternal fetal was like, let's keep an eye on that. And I had complete placenta previa.
Oh
It did
my
not
God.
improve. I know it usually does improve. In my case, of course, it did not. And it just got worse on top of my incompetent cervix that kept shortening. And we tried the progesterone. We tried everything. I was put on bed rest. I lost my job. It sucked.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
so...
Andrea, that's unbelievable.
This podcast is really therapeutic. I just want to say I'm like dumping a
Get
lot
it
of
out.
emotion.
But I mean, it's so
Yeah.
much trauma. And, even being able to have, by the way, that term incompetent cervix is such a terrible term, but
it felt incompetent. I was very
right.
upset with my cervix. I was like, come on, get it
Right.
together.
But it's every part of your body is suffering, right? And you get so naturally angry with your body. Women get angry with their bodies like, come on, aren't you going to work? And our bodies are trying the best it can try, right? We're doing the best we can. And we get so frustrated and so angry about this whole situation. And yet you just kept going. You were like, okay, whatever this is, I've got to deal with it. And you just kept moving forward.
Well, at that point, I kind of had no choice. I was like, I got this baby inside me. I gotta like keep going. But it took a lot of tears to keep going. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And, I know some people were probably annoyed online that I was overly emotional, but it was scary.
Of
And
course.
I did have HG as well. I can't say the full thing right, but I had HG. I was throwing up the whole pregnancy. That made my incompetent cervix worse because of the pressure. So I was like, okay, we can't control the puking. We can't control the cervix.
Oh my gosh.
Complete placenta previa is looking really bad. It's hanging over my cervix. And so I had a cervical cerclage at week 17. It was urgent. And they put in 2 cerclages. It stayed in.
Wow.
Till week 37, when my maternal fetal recommended I deliver via C-section. And I also had a uterine bleed. So there was a lot of pregnancy depression, a lot of pregnancy anxiety. I thought with every milestone, I would be good. I was like, hey, once we have viability, I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
I was not okay.
Of course.
It doesn't go away. Even when you give birth, even now with my daughter, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, please don't hurt yourself.
Yes.
Or you're just always worried for the rest of your life because you know what it's like to lose a child.
Yes. It's so awful. Yeah. And you're saying I had no choice, but you know what, Andrea, some people would just stay in bed and say like, I'm not getting up. Like, I can't handle the world. I don't want to face the world. I can't deal with life. And even though you were traumatized, you were like, okay, well, what's the next procedure? Let me get on top of this. Let me handle it. And it's amazing that you were able to pursue it in spite of all of these experiences, right? You've had this trauma behind you.
Yeah. And so we, keep going with the pregnancy. It's now week 37, exactly 37 weeks. And there were for a few episodes where I almost delivered early, but I thankfully did not. So day of C-section came and everything seemed pretty okay. I kept my eye on the clock. I can't help but be that healthcare worker inside me and make sure everything is going smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed the clock was going a lot longer than I thought. the doctor said that I was going to feel tugging. I was like, that's weird. So I was on the C-section table like this. I was like, what is going on over there? But I can't see anything. Neither can my husband. I told him not to look. We didn't want him to pass out. He wouldn't, but like, you never know.
Right.
Because C-sections are like a lot
Of course.
to look at.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a reason they tell
husbands not
your
to look.
support
Yes.
person not to look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the tugging happened. They showed me my baby. She cried. It was the best moment. Like, I wish there was like a picture of that moment. It was just, there's just a lot going on, but it was beautiful. And that beautiful moment, like, quickly started to get, what's the word, like, spiraling into now danger. My daughter was not breathing well because
oh my gosh,
she swallowed fluid, but they didn't know that at the time. They took her to the NICU, so I didn't get to hold her, and I was losing a lot of blood. I was losing so much blood that they had a second surgeon come in. I felt like I was dying. I was like, what is happening? Like, I feel not okay right now. I had my phone recording because my husband went to go grab the baby to bring to me. And I dropped my phone because I was just like losing consciousness. My husband comes to me empty-handed. He's like, they took baby to NICU and they thankfully were able to close me up. I lost 1,700 cc's of blood. It was a lot. I got some transfusions. I was okay.
Wow.
And I also tested positive for COVID the day of my delivery. No. And because of this, I could not go to the NICU to see my baby. And they told me they didn't know how long baby would be in the NICU, but because I had COVID, I couldn't go for over a week. And I was like, you're telling me I can't have my baby for a week? Gosh. And I lost my ability to speak. I could not talk. It was really weird. I don't know if it was a mental thing or a physical thing. There was just a lot of shock going on, but I could not speak. So I was just like, like that, like freaking out and all this information. But her NICU nurse was thankfully able to grab an iPad and have me, FaceTime with my baby for a bit and showed us our baby. And it was just a really traumatic experience. Yeah, and so I did deal with a lot of postpartum depression, which is so unfair because I worked so hard to get here to have my baby.
Yes.
And I experienced a lot of, PTSD struggles and depression. And a lot of people tell me, why didn't you just adopt? And we did look into that. Adoption comes with its own traumas, its own struggles and challenges. Yes, there is no getting around.
That is rough. Yes.
Yeah, it might be physically, like with body wise, a little easier, but not mentally, not financially, not all of it.
Correct.
I would love to someday, but it wasn't for me.
Right.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Of course.
Because it's open to anybody, not just to those with infertility. If you choose to adopt, that's great. If you don't, then don't.
Right. Everybody's got to choose their own path.
Yes, exactly.
My name is Lisa Schumann. I'm a therapist, a researcher, an author, and I am passionate about helping people find a better journey to parenthood. I created the Center for Family Building to help people understand how to make decisions, not just for the short term, but for a lifetime. We have group counseling, individual counseling, couples counseling, and lots of other services that can help people find the answers that they're looking for. Just take a look at our website so you can see a few of the thousands of people we helped build a better path to parenthood. The decisions you make are too important to leave up to chance. Arm yourself with the right information. Take a look at our website and sign up for a session with one of our therapists, join one of our groups, or access one of our programs, and you will quickly see why our strategies are so effective. Now back to our episode. So you had postpartum depression. So here you are, finally, you have a baby, and you have to go through another trauma in the delivery, both with the baby and yourself, not just one of you. Yeah. You have this horror, you're losing all this blood, the baby's got fluid, you've got all this nightmare stuff to deal with, and then you finally get home and you can't even fully enjoy her because, of course, naturally, your body's having a reaction to all of this. And so you had the postpartum depression. And then how did you handle that? How did you deal with that?
I will say I knew I had postpartum depression as soon as they brought my daughter to me. They gave her to me 24 hours later. And I thought it was going to be this magical moment. Like I was going to be in tears. They handed her to me and I felt nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the worst feeling ever.
Yes, of course.
That was awful. I knew right away. I was like, damn, I have postpartum depression. I have birth trauma.
Mm-hmm,
and I was too scared to tell the nurses. I was too scared. I was scared they were going to take my baby or, postpartum hormones and emotions. I was just scared. I just wanted her. Even though I was struggling, I wanted her.
Of course.
And so, I was desperate for that connection. So for like the first couple weeks, I was just like in my bra and underwear, skin to skin for weeks. I was like, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to push through this. And though it helped, I still needed more help.
Of course.
I did eventually tell my doctor at my 6-week postpartum appointment that I was struggling. And, she gave me antidepressants and told me about counseling that they offer through the state or through the county. I was like, okay, let's do it. And it was a journey. I struggled with postpartum depression for like a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know how long it would last. Most people are like, oh, it's weeks, months. No, it can be years.
Yes, yeah, it can.
And I learned a lot about postpartum depression at that time because a little over a year later, I got pregnant again. And ended up being a miscarriage. And though at the time I was like in shock, I was mentally not okay. And just a bunch of other emotions. Something about that miscarriage did something with my hormonal imbalance, my brain. It did something because I started to feel better. And that is weird to say, but it just shows how much these events can affect your body. Like it's not my fault for this chemical imbalance in my brain or my body.
Of course it's not your fault.
Yeah, maybe it was a blessing in disguise. I'll never see a miscarriage as a blessing ever, but
there was a silver lining. Yes.
Yeah, it was, it kind of saved me in a sense because I was losing it.
So it kind of recalibrated your emotions and you were able to get into a better place after that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And it was until a couple months later, I decided to do the bilateral self-injectomy, talked to my OBGYN, and she was very supportive, thankfully. And we did it. It was a big decision, but we did it. And
it's smart. Yeah.
It's hard. Infertility haunts me till this day.
Oh my gosh.
Even though I have my daughter, but you learn to cope with it. You learn to live with it. You learn to connect with others and kind of normalize these conversations. I was talking to a friend recently that is a travel nurse about postpartum depression. And most people say, oh, well, as long as you and baby are okay, you'll be fine. She said, how did that feel? And no one's ever asked me that. Like, no one ever asked me that. And I remember just pouring out my feelings. Like, that's how it should be. We should talk about these things.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like with infertility, we feel like especially that we have to be grateful because this is what we wanted. So we don't talk about it as much. We pretend everything is all sunshine and rainbows. And maybe for some it is. Like, I'm jealous if you are.
Yes.
If everything goes smoothly for you, that's great. But for some of us, we still, infertility or not, you can't choose if you go through
of course not.
Or postpartum depression. It does not discriminate.
It does not discriminate. And people can't appreciate that, right? And they feel uncomfortable with it. So they say things that are unhelpful, like just adopt or you'll be fine or go on vacation or any of these things. And you more than anybody, Andrea, understands that has nothing to do with how hard you're working at it because you worked at it harder than anybody I've ever seen. And you still had all of this bad luck. One thing after another happened to you. And I think you made an incredible decision to get rid of those tubes that were just going to cause you more stress. But that's not easy either, right? None of these decisions have been easy for you. And yet you've been able to pursue it, which is really, really incredible. And I'm sure people listening probably feel like, how is it even possible? I've had, one chemical pregnancy, or I've had IUI and it didn't work and I'm already, a puddle on the floor. How is she dealing with this? So could you tell us a little bit about that? Like how could people deal with this journey when things are not going well for them and thinking, I don't know when this is going to end, right? Because you start treatment, you have no idea when the end is going to be. You don't know what you're going to experience next. It's so frightening. And your partner may not even be on the same page.
So my first pregnancy, I got pregnant almost right away. And I know that's annoying to hear in the fertility community. So if you rolled your eyes at that, that's so fine. But I lost it at my 12-week appointment when we realized it was a miscarriage. And that's where I lost my innocence of a healthy pregnancy and this going the way it should be going. And miscarriages and pregnancy loss are weird because there were some that I experienced where I thought, I am never doing this again. And then there were times I wanted to try right away again. You do this at your pace.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
and your spouse's pace.
Yes.
When you're ready.
Yes.
Because there are times I was ready and my husband was not ready, or where he was super ready and I was like, I am not there.
Mm-hmm.
And it plays a big part. But my biggest thing is to try to cling on to that what if for as long as possible. And what I mean by that is, what if it happens? What if it works? What if this is the one? That what if is what kept me going. And I hope it keeps others going as much as they can, whatever that looks like, whatever their journey is, surrogacy, egg donor, sperm donor, embryo donor, adoption, whatever it is, cling on to that what if.
Okay. So that's so helpful. But I also know that people out there might be saying, well, Andrea, I'm afraid of what if, because if I think what if and it doesn't work out, I feel like I'm setting myself up for a bigger disappointment. So maybe I should think negatively. Maybe I should think this is not going to work out and bad things are going to happen to me. And then maybe I don't have such a high place to fall from. What would you say to that?
I get it. That's my biggest thing. That's how I would respond. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were so many times during my pregnancy, I was told, not just my recent pregnancy, like all my pregnancies with all, because they all have their own story where people thought I was being negative. And it's not negative to speak about the demons you're dealing with inside of you.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. It is okay to say it out loud, because the more we keep that in, the more harmful it is to us, and let it out. Like, I'm sure there's people that are going to not appreciate hearing that or say all the wrong things once you do. But if you have a safe person you can speak to, or even a journal you can write into, or be like me and spill your beans online, and that's okay, because a lot of times I was not positive in my journey because I knew what it was like to have, that child taken from me, that baby, that all the hope taken from me. I know, I get it. And I hope people out there know that people like me exist out there, that we get it. You don't have to believe in the silver. I hate silver linings, to be honest. And if you find comfort in that, that's totally fine. But if you don't, you're my people. Like, it's okay to let those emotions out. And, it's not an easy road. And I wish it was. I wish it worked at the first treatment. I wish everyone can carry their pregnancy to term and have a healthy baby. I wish.
Yeah.
And it's okay to express these to your doctors, because they will guide you with more resources like counseling and support groups. So please express them to them.
So in a way, you're kind of saying You're going to be scared. You're going to be hurt. It's natural. Of course, it's traumatic to lose your pregnancy, to lose that dreamed of baby, because of course, it's not just the pregnancy, it's also all those dreams you had about the baby
Yeah,
shower, about being pregnant with your best friend, about all these things, and that gets destroyed. And so it sounds like you're saying, if you want to move forward, you can feel all those fears and sadness and still take steps in that direction of trying again anyway.
absolutely. I have an anxiety disorder.
Mm.
I struggle with anxiety and I have for a really long time,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still doing what I'm doing. I can still push through it. It's just something I live with. I also live with grief and
Yes.
happiness. These emotions and experiences can coexist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my
Mm-hmm.
birth, it was the most magical and horrific day of my life. It
Yes.
was both. You can experience both. And there are people that are totally positive throughout all of it. I mean, even with IVF, they're extremely positive and good for them. But if that is not you, that is okay as well.
Yeah. And I think that's so important for people to hear because they feel like they need to, right? People say, well, you'll be okay. You just need to be positive, or you just need to be hopeful, and sometimes you can't be, right? You're just too, you're a ball of mess after everything you've been through. You can't possibly summon any energy to be happy, nor do you need to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
And how did that affect your husband, Andrea, if you don't mind sharing that with us? How did that affect him? Because it is different for men than for women very often in this experience.
With him, so we did a support group through the Cade Foundation
Mm-hmm.
where they split us up into groups, males and females. So the men had to talk without us there. And that was really good for him. That was one of the first times I ever really saw him express his side of things. I don't know what went on with that group because I was in my own little group, but he said after that, he really connected with the other men. He
Oh,
understood their feelings and he loved that they were able to talk about it because men don't really talk about their emotions.
right.
And they expressed how they felt useless, how they felt like they didn't know how to help or how to react
Mm-hmm.
or how to be a support to us because they're also going through their own things. And
Yes.
I love that he told me all these things because that kind of helped me understand him better. Because I was hard on him sometimes too. Like, hey, you should be there for me 1,000,000%, but I'm not here thinking about him either. He's also going through something and we
Mm-hmm.
got to find a way to lean on each other instead of being against each other at this time, struggling to understand each other. That can cause a lot of tension in
Yes.
couples. I mean, this causes divorce.
Yes,
Like it,
absolutely.
it does. And I
Yes.
can see it. It's almost broken us so many times. And I'm not embarrassed to speak about that because it takes a toll on your relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And did the two of you feel differently? Like you were saying, I know I can have this pain, I can have this anxiety, I can have this trauma, and at the same time still pursue treatment. Was he feeling similarly in that way, or did he want to take breaks? Did he feel like differently about treatment than you did?
With IVF, he wanted to start that right away. I was really shocked, to be honest. But he was like, I want to do this. I want to do it. I was like, well, I'm not there. I'm not with you there. So that's when I did individual therapy
Mm-hmm.
versus the couples therapy. I was like, I feel like mentally he is there. He's good and ready, but I'm not. So, and I sought out help. And that was another cost. I had to invest money into treating my mental health struggles. That's so unfair.
So
That should
unfair.
not be a thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
So
with you there.
yeah, we were not on the same page a lot of times and it didn't always cause tension. Sometimes we're just like, well, okay, like let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready to move forward. And my husband told me, take your time. I don't know where one day, months after our egg retrieval, I came up to him and said, I'm ready. I'm ready to do the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like crying. My husband does not cry. He was crying. He was so happy. He's like, oh my gosh, like we're going to do this. And of course he experienced the anxiety as well. But my anxiety takes it a step further. I'm grateful that he was kind of like grounding me a lot during those struggles, though he had his own concerns and fears. But he was there. I know it was hard for him as well when I gave birth, because he was like, how can I be with baby and mom when they're separated if I need to be there for both? Yeah, it's not easy, and he, of course, experienced all the fears and anxieties and stress as well with me, but we were able to truck along.
So he was willing to continue to pursue it. He never said, and Andrea, we have to stop. This is, so much. It's like loss after loss, treatment after treatment, financial strain, hardship, you name it. Let's stop. He never.
There was only one time he was really like that. It was after my second pregnancy loss. I wanted to get pregnant again. I don't know why. I just really wanted to. And my husband was like, no, like financially, we're just not there. I don't even want to think about another pregnancy right now. And that was hard for me because I was like becoming a little crazy and testing for pregnancy anyways, even though we were using protection. So like, I'm still going to test because you never know.
Never know.
No. And it took him a little bit to come around for him to be ready as well. So yeah, there were definitely times where, he said no, he wasn't ready.
And how did you handle that? I mean, if he said, I'm not ready, how did you deal with that?
I was kind of a brat. I'm not going to lie. I was like, why aren't you ready? I'm the one that has to go through it. I have to do it. Like, what are you talking about? And now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could talk to my younger self and be like, girl, he's going through this too, like be patient. And yeah, at that time, I didn't really understand him. We made a lot of mistakes with each other. Like, and I've shared about it online too, where I'm like, I'm not trying to make my husband look bad or make me look bad. It's just sometimes we don't handle,
of course,
infertility or pregnancy loss well.
Yes, of course. So you also, though, are going through all the treatments and the losses. And even though he's experiencing loss too, your body is the one that's going through all of this. So were you ever feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm the one who has to like bear the burden of all these shots, all the treatments. Now I find out one after the other problems, and yet he's not going through that. It also feels, I think, for a lot of people unfair, because if you're in a heterosexual relationship, the woman is usually the person who has to bear the burden of all of that.
It's actually something we talk about till this day, because my husband would love another IVF baby soon. And I'm like, that's great. It's your turn. I joke around saying that. I always joke. I'm like, because I am so not there, not there. And he gets that. But yeah, we still discuss those disagreements till this day, because that's just the cards we have been dealt with.
And now you have this beautiful little girl, and your family and friends and everybody must be so happy. Do they also understand how scary it might be for you to start treatment again, because you did have another loss?
Oh, my whole family is traumatized. I traumatized them all. They're all like, even my dad came up to me one day. It was like, I don't think you should do it again, because he's scared. When I forgot to mention it about my C-section, when they were tugging me, it's because my daughter was a double footling breech sideways.
Wow.
She was stretched out sideways. I thought I felt her feet. I knew he felt something funny that day. But yeah, she was stuck, and they had to cut my uterus twice. And so they barely saved my uterus. And my doctor, the surgeon, was like, be very careful. I would wait maybe 2 years to get pregnant again. She's like, if you have another pregnancy, I will say it's going to be more high risk than the pregnancy you just had.
Oh, gosh.
And she was like, I can't promise you're going to have your uterus after that. So it's like, that's a big thing that plays a part too. So my family, even my husband, like he gets scared of that too. It's like, this can cost me my life because I'm at risk for placental abruption now.
Yes,
And
which is terrifying.
that sucks. Like, do I want to do this? Do I not? Because there's a chance I might not go through that, and it might be okay, but I don't know. So
And you've been through so much already, Andrea.
yeah, I'm just enjoying motherhood and the trenches of toddlerhood. My toddler is feisty.
Yeah,
But
really.
I love it. I love it. Like, I love the mess. I love that there's chaos. I love that her toys are everywhere. And that's why I'm hot mess IVF mom. People think that's such a I think people think mess is bad. And I'm like, no, I love it. Like, this is my beautiful disaster.
Right.
It's
The good
a
mess.
difficult story. Exactly. It's a difficult story that gave me something beautiful in the end. And I see my life like that. Like, my life is a hot mess, but I love it. It's mine.
And now I think you probably, and I think everyone will appreciate this, now all of a sudden you have your daughter, and it certainly doesn't make the trauma go away because that creates scars in you that take a long time to heal. But certainly you're having all these experiences now. Like, I know you just went to Disney with your daughter, right? And you're having all these like fun experiences that you probably always dreamt of. And that must be so wonderful.
I love it. I mean, Disney's great. Disney's so great. But I would say just even yesterday, I had like some tears going on. I don't know why I'm so emotional right now. But I was like picking up her toys and like in tears and just grateful that I had toys to pick up and her clothes to wash because it's so empty when you have a pregnancy loss. Like, that's all gone. Like, I wanted that. I wanted to be stressed about my toddler. I wanted, to watch TV with her, even if it's the most obnoxious cartoon I've ever seen. I want to see it with her. So it's like those little things it feels surreal. It still does. I'm like, I did this. I had a child. Like, it feels like it didn't even happen, but it did. And it's something I still address to this day because I live with PTSD and the anxiety. So I still got to address it. I wish I could just like make it go away, but it doesn't work like that.
No.
But these little moments are just everything.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though, as you say, it's probably just a drop in the bucket of the trauma, you've had so many years of trauma. And so you need so many good experiences just to even make a dent in all of that trauma. It's so heartfelt and so appreciated. It sounds like you're really things that people take for granted, like, going through diapers or sleepless nights with the baby. You're loving every second of it.
Yes, yes. And even through postpartum depression, you can still love every second and at the same time not be okay, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Like, I was still glad I was able to breastfeed, even though I was kind of miserable doing it at the same time.
Of course.
It just...
That's a problem you'd like to have over the problems you had previously.
Yeah, exactly. It's just...
Yes.
You're just grateful. And like I said, coexist. You just learn to coexist. And that's the best way to go about it, I feel. Not to suppress it, not to pretend it's not going on or that you're not feeling these things. It's to learn that it coexists and it's okay to have those hard days. Till this day, Mother's Day is hard for me. I have my daughter. Mother's Day and Christmas are very hard for me. And still is. And I thought that would go away. And it actually got worse when my daughter was born because now I know what it's like to have her. And so that made me even more sad about my pregnancy losses. And I didn't realize I would feel that way. And so did my husband. We were both grieving our first Christmas with her, not the whole day, just like briefly. Because I mentioned it. I was like, why is today so hard? That's not fair. Like, what is this? And my husband said, no, I feel it too. He's like, I wish we had this with the other babies. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's really what I'm feeling. I wish I had this with the other babies too.
And the pain is terrible, but it honors their memory, Andrea, right?
Exactly. So we still had a great Christmas. And I still loved her first Christmas Day, but I did need that moment of grief. I did need that little mental breakdown. And then I was okay for the rest of the day. So
Yes.
it's okay to coexist with all these emotions.
Right. And you can keep moving forward even with
Exactly. You can keep
the
moving forward. You will still experience happiness, and you
yes.
appreciate happiness way more when you've felt these dark, broken moments. You truly do. So when I'm happy, I am happy.
Right. Over the moon.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's beautiful, Andrea. And thank you so much for joining us today and telling the story. I can't thank you enough for being so open, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this feels the same. Where can people reach you if they want to ask you questions about your journey or about what we talked about today?
Send me a DM on TikTok or Instagram at Hot Mess IVF Mom. I'll be there. Or through the Cade Foundation as well. I take care of their page. So Cade Foundation as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So you just keep giving back, Andrea. You're a very special person. And I know you've been through so much, but for all of us who get to know you, we have this silver lining because we can see our pain not being alone and our pain being valid and our individual experiences being honored in you. And so I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here and for listening to all of this. This felt like a therapy session. It was great. This was great.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And I look forward to seeing you in person. I know that you'll be back at ASRM this year, and I'm so grateful that you come and you educate all of us about what we need to know about social media, because certainly that is not my forte, but I certainly appreciate your talent, and I so again appreciate everything that you do for everybody else. And everyone who's out there, please reach out to Andrea. She is really, an encyclopedia of experiences, and she is supportive and loving, as you can see, and is there for all of us. So we're very grateful to have her. Yes. And please reach out to us too at familybuilding.net if you need anything, if you'd like to have some support. We have great resources and great strategies to help you with your journey. And please subscribe, because that's how we keep going. And thank you so much for coming today. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too. Hi, it's Lisa Schumann. I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I hope it helped you. And if it did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, because that's how we keep going. It's really important to us. And if you liked it, you might like this one.